We are live again at another edition of Kev and Convos, and today we got Ty back on.
What's up, everyone?
We've hit another big milestone in our project with the property at Chatham,
Absolutely.
and it's a little bit past 60 days since close, and we kind of just wanted to recap and just like reflect back on the past 60 days ish that went by and how much we've sort of like all the stuff we've gone through, all the different changes, all the different challenges, but just sharing the real stories so then I guess people at home that are listening, they have better perspective.
Yeah, they get the what do you say? The real side of real estate.
The real side of real estate. That's right. Because we're just like, this is all near and dear to us right now. It's so fresh and there's a lot of lessons to be learned.
Absolutely.
So viewer discretion is advised. Everything is real. Like we're not gonna hide anything. I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything like that. So if it's something you guys don't want to hear and it sounds scary, do plug your ears. That's for sure. But we started off right, I think the 15th of December. So right in the middle of the month is when we closed,
Yeah.
right? And before that, how did we prepare? Let's kind of backtrack a little bit. So how did we prepare in terms of uh, getting to where we were at? So then as soon as we close, we can get started on the renovation.
From when we closed, or
I
if
guess
even before
before, a
that.
little bit
Okay,
before that.
yeah. Well, we were kind of looking at some properties. We were trying to figure out. I know you had a goal of acquiring your next property before the end of the year, and we were kind of keeping an eye out. And we were looking and searching. We came across a few properties, and some of them they have potential, but they just didn't work out. And then I ended up looking out in Chatham, and we were looking around. There's a couple properties that we saw, and then we came across this one. Um, the viewing, talked to the agent, went down to the house, uh, and did our first viewing. The place was definitely it needed some work and some TLC. Yeah, that it was just like I guess no one lived in there for a few months, so really, really, really just dusty, dirty. The house is stuck in the '60s. Is uh, markings all over the wall. It was a prime candidate for like a horror movie.
Oh, I mean, when you say it that way, it sounds really bad. Um, I mean, there were, I mean, there were moments that, it looked a little haunted for a while because, like you said, it was empty for a long time.
Yeah,
I mean, you said a few months, but if by the looks of it, it could have been a few years. It could have been, right?
yeah.
Safe to say?
Who knows? Yeah, the neighbors were just happy that someone was doing the due diligence and kind of taking that quote unquote eyesore off the street for them.
Yeah, no, and that property itself, I think, we were a little bit nervous about it at the beginning because we didn't know exactly what was behind the walls, like just a lot of that kind of stuff. So let's talk about that. So we kind of went in. We didn't have an inspector per se because they weren't really. I mean, this is not the smartest thing to do, but they weren't really accepting conditions on the property itself.
Yeah, they were saying no conditions, and since it was, I guess it was a government sale, they were mentioning that they couldn't provide any information about anything.
Yeah,
They don't know nothing about nothing. So you ask them, when was this last done? They couldn't tell you, So you were kind of going in there, to a certain extent blind, but you have with whatever knowledge you have, and then you can take away. Um, that's what you kind of had to go in there with. So you had to make sure, you crossed your T's, dotted your I's, you know, make sure you took a lot of videos and pictures to make sure that, maybe there's something that you missed on the first walkthrough, but maybe you catch it in the video, um, yeah, yeah. So we had to do a whole lot of due diligence. Like we walked through the property, head to toe, outside, all around, and everywhere to make sure that if there was anything that looked out of place or that was a question mark or anything, we made sure to take note of it. So that way we kind of had a good idea of what we're getting ourselves into.
And also we can't forget to mention that during our walkthroughs we actually had a contractor friend of ours
Yeah,
that walked through with us, so we can kind of at least had better perspective, or
exactly.
just had like a better, like, I guess, like a better eye set of eyes.
Yeah, the more set of eyes to a certain extent, the better, especially when you have someone who's in the trades or who does contracting. So they'll be able to pick up on things that you potentially won't be able to. So it's a good idea if you do have friends or someone that does do construction, they can kind of point things out that that you might not necessarily look for. Like an example, when we were looking through the basement, he was like wiping the brick to see if there was, I think it was the Everessence on it, to see if if there was any water damage or anything like that. That's happened in the basement, and he was saying, yeah, he couldn't see anything like that. So the basement was dry. There looked like there was some wet spots, but he was saying that could just be just regular moisture and stuff like that.
No,
Um,
no smell either
no
from mold.
smell. Yeah, exactly.
So that, and then there was a wet spot upstairs behind the closet, right?
Yeah,
There was some suspicions that there could have been like maybe a leak from the tub, right?
we saw that. We saw those spots. We thought it was a potential mold issue with where the tub was. Then we were talking to our friend who is a contractor, and he said it could just have potentially been that's where an animal, well, like they had their pet was. They use that corner of the room as like a litter box area. So because even in that flooring spot, it was like really really worn down, and
That's another spot actually. So there's two spots.
yeah,
There was the one that was like on the wall, it was wet, so it was just dried out.
yeah,
And then there was that other spot where the flooring was like, it looked like there was a fire there because it was black.
yeah.
So the like the black part could have been water damage. So it like kind of reflecting back on it. Obviously, you look at those things and you're like, okay, well, I don't know what it is exactly is, and obviously the smart thing to do would be to find out, but there is time constraint. Like by the
Hmm.
time you find out, it could be like a month later, which means you lose the opportunity to buy that property. But what I'd realized was that from previous experiences, you got to think to yourself and be like, is this something that you can manage? Because if it's something that you can't afford or something you don't know how to manage, that's where the costs go out of control.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we kind of went in there with that acceptance that, hey, listen, like these things seem to be from professional opinion, or like the contractor specifically, that these are what he believes that these situations or previous damages were.
Hmm.
And then we kind of take that information, and the probability of it being correct or incorrect is not too far off, of course, right?
Exactly.
It's not like he's saying that there's a wet spot there and it's like a meteorite that, like, something from the heavens came and like touched that, or
Yeah.
something like that, right? So it's like you can kind of guesstimate whether he's kind of on the right track or not.
Hmm.
So I guess the original question for that I kind of, or topic that we kind of brought up, was how did we prepare for the the first day we took the keys? So what did we do to prepare ahead of time for that? And I think we talked about it the last time, where we talked about getting trades and stuff ahead of
Yeah.
time. So on that day that we got the keys, people came in to do walkthroughs with us for quotations. So
Yeah.
let's talk about how important it is to get multiple quotes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Um, there was I think we had there was a large tree in the back, and I think one of the branches fell and hit one of the vents or hit an exhaust vent out there. So something one of the rings I guess came off. So we needed a just a quote from a roofer,
Mhm.
just to kind of see what the best course of action would be, and we had two, three. I think we had three of them come by.
We had two. Wait, let me think. We had two real roofers, and then
Yeah.
one was like a general
Yeah,
contractor,
GC.
GC.
Yeah.
So where that's important is, this is so important because it's not the matter of getting a lot of quotes for the sake of just like, a price matching.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really just about that, but you got to understand obviously the scope of the work and which what each person is bringing to the table.
Yep.
because you can be like, well, we got like, we'll just kind of leave it kind of vague, right? But we got one quote for like about maybe like a thousand-ish dollars, and then we got one for like two something, and then we got another one that was like in the middle, like right in the middle, right,
Yeah.
like between 250 to 1,000. And if you got to hear what the scope of work really is, because if, let's say for example, one guy says I'm going to change the shingle, one guy changes it for 1,000, the other guy says I'm going to change the shingle as well, it's another 1,000, not an additional 1,000, but he's saying it's 1,000. And then the third guy says it's 250 and I'm only changing the shingle. Well, then it's an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, you got to make sure that, everyone's speaking the same language, or that they're all going to do the same thing, right? So if you're looking to say, hey, I need these shingles replaced,
Yeah.
you need to make sure that, hey, I'm looking to get these shingles replaced, not someone else being like, hey, I'll just re-nail the other ones down and I'll charge you less, you know. So that's a big thing, right? Because
But
yeah.
that could be an alternative as well, right?
Oh, for sure. You don't rule it out as like saying, "Oh, hey, I'm looking for a replacement. This guy wants to nail it down, so therefore I'm just not going to do it."
Yeah.
But you need to make sure that, hey, okay, by re-nailing it down,
Yeah.
are like, one, are the current shingles that you're going to be re-nailing down, are they in good enough shape to be reused? Is it just because of a windstorm, or is it just, or are they just peeling off because they're just old? So you
Yeah.
need to make sure that you have, you know, uh, a good knowledge and see what you're putting back up there, because you don't want to take the cheapest route
Yeah.
to a certain extent, to be like, oh, I need to, 250 is less than 1,000, so I need to just do that route, and then um, you end up spending more money in the long run because it wasn't done properly, or your money can go a bit farther sometimes, by doing it the right way. And it depends on the situation. Sometimes it calls for an $1,000 fix.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just calls for 250 fix. Sometimes it calls for you just jumping on the roof yourself and doing it, right?
Yeah. So, like the unit of measurement, right, has to be the same. Just like
Exactly.
if you're going to compare kilometers to meters to whatever, make sure it's all the same. For example, that's the same idea, but in this situation, which is really important to know, because you have to understand what is the appropriate fix,
Yeah.
right? Because the 250 fix or the cheapest one might be the correct one. The $1,000 one could be correct one as well,
Mhm.
but it might not be the most like necessary one for that circumstance.
Absolutely.
So that was one thing that we kind of like, we realized that, hey, like getting quotes, it's not just running after the cheapest one, right?
Yep.
It's understanding. So it requires a little bit of digging as well, which is pretty crazy, because the more that we've been doing this over the last 60-ish days, we realized we use that same template over and over again, repetitively, not
Yeah.
just for roofing, but for plumbing, for electrical, for HVAC. Like when we're getting quotes now, when we get multiple, because that's the key. You can't have just one or two. We
Yeah,
need multiple,
exactly.
right? And with the multiple, you're getting like a very fair comparison. And if it's not fair, like in terms of scope, scope of work, then at least is that the difference in price at that point, like, because let's say for example, we use this whole shingle analysis again, right,
Hmm.
about if they're doing the exact same thing and the prices are different, then okay, and we have to assume they're all identical, okay, then obviously you're going to go with the cheapest one. But
Hmm.
that's not how life works. Nothing works like
Yeah.
in that sort of singular or linear fashion. It's not it just doesn't work like that. So if the difference actually in the price would be in the craftsmanship, the quality of material, and experience level, it could be a variety of different variables. So understanding that we were able to take that same template, like I said, use it for HVAC, use it for electrical. What else?
Yeah, HVAC, electrical, even well, this is a little bit on the side, but even just for, like, sourcing materials and stuff
That's
like
right.
that, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, like using that template to make sure that we're all talking the same language. So if I'm going out there looking for three apples,
Yeah.
okay, I'm talking to the three different vendors and be like, hey, I'm looking for these three kind of apples,
Yeah.
right? So that way you're getting a fair and concise um quote. So that way everyone's all on the same page, and then you can make the best decision possible.
Yeah, and that's the best way to do it. And I realize because you don't want to go and if you have to explain to somebody else, let's say for example, why did you go with that one versus that one, right? And if it's just price, it doesn't like it's not the full t tale of the story. Like it's not fully encompassing. If you're just going with cheap everything, right? Like I mentioned before, like cheap has its cost. Cheap is like there's a reason why there's a price that
Yep.
like that, right? And I like from our experience so far, we haven't gone always the cheap route,
No, no.
right? Uh,
There's a time and place to spend money, right? You know, and yeah, like if you know that you can get away with, you know, to a certain extent, like, hey, uh, these cabinets are in good enough shape. They just know if I throw a couple coats of paint on them, it'll look presentable, look good. Then go ahead. But on the flip side, if you're like, okay, um, these floors are destroyed, and I'm just gonna try and sand them and paint them. Putting lipstick putting lipstick on a pig, it's not gonna do its thing. So you might have to look into the option of either replacing the floors or even going a whole different route, vinyl, laminate, whatever you decide to go with.
I was gonna say when you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig,
Still a pig.
just a pig with lipstick,
That's it.
right? So that's so kind of moving on to the next stage. So we got the trades to come in to give us a bunch of quotes. So we were able to compare apples to apples. So we understand that if there's a difference in price, why there's a difference in price. And then we moved on to the part where we chose our trades, right? And
Yeah.
I think our criteria for this project, and I don't think it's specifically for this project, but it's for future as well, is quality. We buy real estate properties and these rental properties on the assumption and the basis that we're going to keep them a long time.
Yeah.
Meaning we need quality work that will last us to certain milestones and certain stages.
Yeah.
And we walked into this project agreeing that it's probably going to look like we're going to keep the property minimum 10 to 15. I think things can change, but
Absolutely, yeah. But that I think that that's the mindset now, and that was our mindset going in. Again, like I said, things can change, but we're in the game of buying and holding real estate,
yeah.
So the more you can hold, the better. So as long as everything keeps going the way it is, I can't foresee us selling this place unless something happens crazy.
So maybe let's circle back just a little bit, just to kind of reintroduce the idea of our project and what our project entails, right? Because
Yeah.
it's been a couple weeks and I mean a lot of people don't know. So what we're doing right now is a duplex conversion, so to speak. It's a basement unit, so I don't want to just because duplexes can be side by side, up down, but
Yeah.
this one specifically is adding in a legal basement dwelling
Yes.
which requires permits, which all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And everything has to be done properly. Everything needs to be inspected. So that's part of the long term, 10 to 15 years sort of like horizon, how it kind of fits into that. Because if it was something that we wanted to keep long term, of course, we're going to have to do it the right way, the legal way, the way that, that would benefit us in the long run, right?
Absolutely.
So that's firstly. So we talked about getting to the stage where right before closing, at closing, when we get all these quotes. What about the permit process? Do you want to walk everybody through that, or
Yeah, yeah. So with the permit process, um we have to do, you obviously have to make sure certain things are in check, make sure basement height is obviously
yeah,
um is high enough, obviously. When we submitted for, we had to get drawings too. Drawings was a big thing. Because again, this is for going through the permit process. It's good to have, like, I mean, I don't think you necessarily need it, but it's good for the city at least to have a visual of what you're doing, right?
yeah,
And then you have your drawings. We went through a gentleman out in Chatham that does um permits or drawings. So we did that. We submitted them to the city. It took a little bit, and then we also had contractors come in, uh, give give a rough look over the basement. We made our own like rough drawings so we can kind of think and see what the layout would be. We got some quotes on how much they think the work would be. We waited a little bit for the city to come back to us. They came back to us, gave us the permits, telling us that if there's any modifications that will be needed, and then they gave us like the I guess their order of what they do for the permits. So you have your framing, your plumbing roughing, HVAC roughing, insulation, fireproofing, so on and so forth.
I realized when I asked you that question, uh, that's a question maybe I would have known a lot more about because I was the one that submitted
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
permit
You
itself.
submitted it, so
So I realized I'm like, why am I asking? I'm asking you that part because that part is the part that I know the most about. So I want to like whatever you said, Ty, is completely accurate, and it is a very detailed process. It's not just like like a letter per se to just, oh, you're okay to go, but it gives you a very detailed outline of what is going to be inspected at what stage.
yeah,
So that's really important to know because that's how you're going to be able to plan out with your contractor, like what kind of work they need to do, and you need to contact the inspector like 2 days or 48 hours in
yeah. They
advance.
said 48 hours before.
So the permit process, like Ty just said, what you just said about Ty, is the fact that, yeah, I think that I think you do need some sort of drawing. I think
Yeah,
I can't confirm that because the reason why is that we chose the avenue of getting not going the cheap route. We wanted somebody that
yeah,
knows the city bylaw really well and has done decades of drawings for people in that, for clients and people for that municipality specifically. So we didn't want to just do our own thing. We didn't want somebody from out of town because delays, right? You're going to
yeah,
get somebody that doesn't know the bylaws as well, or
yep,
specifically for that municipality. Then things get delayed, and I feel like the designer that we chose, that designer specifically, he knows a lot of these inspectors by first name.
yep,
So that's really important. And we all know that there's so many delays in general, like from getting the wrong materials, things breaking, like a lot of the tools going missing, whatever. We didn't want that additional delay to be because of us just being cheap and just
yep.
trying to draw by hand, freehand, and then just sending it in or whatever, something to that regard.
Hmm.
So it's just a common theme of not like allocating and investing your funds into the right sort of resources
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, it wasn't that expensive to go the more expensive route.
No, again, like we were saying, there's a time and place to spend money, right? And if you know that spending money on getting official drawings will make the permitting process smoother and it'll give less delays per se, because then like in the drawings like that we got from I guess he's an architect or
Yeah,
yeah,
architect, designer.
yeah, from it, it's very, very, very detailed, right?
Yeah,
And it gives measurements to everything. So that way, there's nothing left to the imagination for the city or for the inspectors. So they know exactly what's going where, what, and where it's going where. And everything it's like, okay, this room is going to be 10 foot by 20, 10 foot by 12 foot. This room's going to be this size. The kitchen's going to be this. The bathroom space is going to be this. The tub size
yeah,
or shower is going to be this size. You're going to have a vanity this size. The hallway's going to be this size. So there's no second guessing or being like, oh, what's the size of this? Everything is detailed there, and it's so all like there's no stones that are left unturned for the city, so that way they have little to no questions about what's being done. And you at least have someone who knows the bylaws, like you were
yeah.
saying, that's going to bat for you, right?
And he's been going at bat for us because there's been some questions about window. Do we need an additional one? That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you do need somebody like that in your corner. And so let's kind of, okay, so we applied or we had the designer come in the first day, actually. The first day we
Yep.
got the keys, he came in to not delay time because, but this was around before Christmas time. So everyone's either celebrating a little bit earlier, like,
Yeah, it's they're either celebrating or they're like or if you're a business you're starting to wind down now. Christmas shutdowns coming around. So
and people are in the holiday mood anyway, right?
exactly.
So it's like to no fault of anybody's. I'm sure that even you and I, we were really excited for Christmas, right?
Yeah.
So it's understandable. So us getting being proactive, getting making the phone calls, getting introduced to the right people ahead of time on the day of close. Yes, that's sort of expedited and that's sort of happening. And then after that, we went up a few times around before Christmas during holidays time. We did work as well. Like we stayed the first weekend when we got the keys. Of course, we started painting cabinets, right? And
Yeah.
let's talk about that. How easy or hard is it to do? Like let's because I think that before people watch a lot of content about burrs and about doing this, doing that. When you're actually doing the actual painting and sanding of the cabinets. Let's like how difficult or how easy was it?
Um, I think it was pretty easy. It does take a little bit of time for sure. But it's relatively easy, you know. You use a degreaser to just to clean the surfaces. You sand the surfaces to scuff it up. You prime it. You paint it. You have to do a couple layers of primer, couple layers of paint, and that's it, right? So it's not a big task. It's not something that's very hard, but it can make a big difference to an outdated space.
Okay, so this is where remember we talked about the real estate. Okay, that's like the summary of how that process goes. But the real part of it is it's a lot easier when someone tells you, oh, it's these condition of the cabinets are good. You just keep them and you paint them. But the reality is this, when you scuff them and you start sanding them, the common theme of life, not everything is linear, meaning that there's certain parts more worn out than others, there's certain parts that are a little bit more warped, right? And then the way that you sand it, it's not even throughout the entire thing. Like there's going to be parts where you have more energy, so then it's more sanded down there,
Yeah, yeah,
and then another part where it's less sanded, and then some of it is like it's difficult to see exactly. And then once you start using a cloth to clean it, to clean the sand off or the residue, whatever is left, of the dust, it's not perfect either. And then on top of that, once you start cleaning and you paint it, that's another part, the drying part. And then once like and you have to protect the condition and the and of the cabinets, right? Or the doors, whatever it is, right? Because we had to do the doors too. So we'll talk about that after. But you can't just if you leave things a certain way, for example, to dry, you gotta understand like where you leave them, it's going to be heavy where you leave them, which means that it could cause damage, right? So
yeah.
it's like that's what I'm saying. That's what
Yeah.
our goal for today was to really share
Well,
the
yeah,
real
for
stuff.
sure. Yeah. So I think
Yeah,
the cabinet route was relatively easy.
yeah,
When I say that, it wasn't hard. There was for sure when you're
yeah,
sanding, it might not everything turns out 100% even.
yeah,
With the sanding, but as long like the whole process of that sanding just depends on the material.
yeah,
But in our case, it was the sanding was to rough up the surface
yeah.
so that way the primer could stick, right? And then after that, you have something for the paint to stick to after that. Um, to me, the the degreasing part was the easy part. The sanding part, you try and get everything kind of as even as
Yeah,
possible. Because as long as it's not like um, as long as you're not missing a whole complete side
mm,
or missing a giant section, everything should be relatively okay. Everything like the paint sticks and everything like that. But yeah, I thought for me personally, I thought the painting of the cabinets, the painting part was easy. The only part that I found difficult was like once you have everything painted, making sure that you don't have any paint chunks or
yeah.
little stuff like that to make you have to try and remove those kind of things. And you know again the place is also a little bit of a construction site, right?
Yeah,
So there's dust flying all over the place and all this kind of stuff. So just trying to keep the cabinets in a pristine condition during
protected,
yeah,
right?
protected during the painting process. That I found that was the only thing that was a bit of a challenge.
I remember distinctively going in ahead of time thinking that it was going to be really easy to do. And mind you, painting the cabinets is probably the easiest thing to do out of the entire renovation of the house. That's pretty fair to say,
Y-
probably, right?
Yeah,
Because you can't really, I wouldn't say you can't do it wrong, but if you, it just won't look like whatever you imagine and dream in your mind about how perfect new cabinets look, it won't look that way if you don't do it properly. That's fair to say, right?
100%.
But if you, you need experience though, and you need practice, right? So we're doing it on the fly, and we're obviously there just for the weekend. So it is, I wouldn't say rushed, but
There's a time constraint for
there is a
sure.
time constraint, and that sand clock is kind of, it's ticking.
Yeah, it's always going.
It's always going, and we know that we got to be back home. So that's another thing too, right? So you can't just take your sweet time and just kind of do things as slow as possible. But I would say from that experience alone, I realized the drying part is also something that kind of you got to be strategic about, because you have to lay it a certain way when it dries, and then obviously while we're there, it's not going to be fully dried. It's going to harden, but that's another thing too that kind of breaks my heart every single time. The nick and knacks, like as soon as you start touching it a certain way, or as soon as you, like, let's say you hit it a certain way, the paint comes off. So you got to be really
Yeah,
careful.
yeah, especially when it's not fully dried, because most of these paints it's like 1 hour to like dry to the touch, but it's not fully cured, right? So if you're moving it around and it's hitting the walls or hits something, and it's gonna take that paint off, and then you're kind of like, okay, we'll have to do this all over again, right? Then you're stuck doing a little bit more touch ups, right? Um, yeah, I found that like the cabinets were okay because they were relatively small and you had a large surface area where you could just lay them down flat. It took more time because you'd have to paint one side, wait for them to all dry, and be, whether it's an hour or two to make sure that they're good. So that way, when you flip them over to do the other side, you're not going to have chunks of paint coming off or adding, whatever dust and um, adding the more blemishes to the thing. The doors was I think for us,
It was a challenge.
yeah, that was I think that was the biggest challenge for us, painting the doors. Just because the doors were obviously a lot larger. And I think when we were doing the doors, we moved them to the basement, and we were had them leaned against the wall. So those doors had like a veneer on them, right? So it's a very thin layer of like would, and depending on how they're angled and stuff, if it slid a little bit, it would crack and like start to shred up a little bit of the veneer. So it was tough to try and keep that all in one piece. I found, and then there was no space in the basement really. I mean, if we laid them down flat on the floor, it would take up a bunch of space. And then, our contractor also had
Yeah.
his tools and all that kind of stuff. And so, you're trying. It's a little bit of a fine dance. You're trying not to take up too much space because obviously he needs the space as well. Um, but then on the other side, you're trying to make sure that whatever product that you're finishing or that you're working on comes out the best quality as possible.
Yeah. So that's yeah, while you're talking about that, in my mind, I'm just replaying the entire situation again. And that was very devastating when because the thing is we leave them for the week. Like we leave them just on the angle or on against the wall for the week. So how much weight is being like pressured or pushed onto the surface area of the bottom of the door.
Yeah,
It's quite heavy, right? These doors, mind you, if you lift them, they're not super heavy, but you leave them there for an entire week, that pressure, that cracking, it's gonna, especially on the weakest points of the door,
yeah.
that's where it starts cracking. You come back the following weekend, and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't remember leaving it like that.
Well, it's sometimes it's just that, or sometimes like whether it's us being careless, or you just you're just moving quick. You pick it up and you kind of drag it against the
Yeah,
floor,
that's true
and
too.
then it causes the veneer to kind of come off, or someone comes by and they kind of bump the door and it slides a little bit, or someone readjusts the door because maybe it's too much in their way, and then it causes it to crack. So it's Yeah, that's where the challenge was, you know. If we had, I think, looking back at it, if we had more time or if we had more space per se to, just to lay them all out, all lay them down flat, similar to the cabinets, I think that a lot more veneer would have been saved, you know.
Yeah, and that's not just the main, like, I think a lot of people listening, they'll be like, the people that are like contractor listening, they'll think we're like fools because they're like, oh, what the heck?
Yeah,
But to be fair though, a lot of people that are listening in that are brand new investors or have no experience about this is very valuable to them because you don't want to underestimate how something looks so easy or sounds so easy that it's actually a little bit more things, like a lot more things to consider when doing it, right? And like I've never done that much like handiwork before. Like I've done small things here and there at home, help my dad growing up, things like that. But it wasn't like I haven't renovated an entire house or anything like that to that extent. So people,
yeah,
it's experience, right? And obviously, people that are in the trades and people that are more familiar, they'll be able to give us better advice. But at that point in time, we dedicated and allocated a certain amount of time to doing this type of work to save
yeah,
out some costs and stuff.
for sure. Yeah, we wanted to save some costs, and we also I know we wanted to get we also wanted to get our hands dirty. You know, the place was close enough for us to drive to like on the weekend and spend some time dedicated to fixing things up and yeah, like I said, getting our hands dirty. So it was a good opportunity. It was a good yeah, it was a good opportunity, and like I think at the end of all this, like I learned a lot.
Yeah,
I
me
learned
too.
I learned a lot, and um,
But these are necessary lessons to
oh,
learn.
absolutely right. I think I think this is something that um, any, if not most, investors will eventually go through.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, okay, hey, especially if like when you're investing from far, when you invest from a distance, it's kind of tough. So if you do have the opportunity where you can, indeed, um, do some of the work yourself to save some of the costs. You know, find out what you're capable and like what you're capable and comfortable doing because I think a lot of people are capable of doing a lot, but they're not comfortable doing a lot. You know,
Why
they're
don't
two
you
they're,
elaborate on that?
yeah,
What does that even mean?
yeah, because they're two different things, right? Because I think that some people wanted us to like some people want to do it all. They see on Instagram, they see all this kind of stuff being like, oh hey, I see these people, they're tearing walls down to the studs and they're taking a house from completely empty to, oh, I'm gonna make it the nicest place ever. And sure, I don't doubt anyone, for sure you could do it, but you have to realize what you're really comfortable doing. Are you, do you know, like, you have to be aware of what can happen and make sure you have an answer for that. Do you know anything about plumbing? Okay, well, if something happens and you hit a pipe, do you know how to fix a pipe? No? Okay. Well, you got something you have to think about. Um, you know, are you good? Do you have any machines? Do you have any power tools? If you don't have power tools, it's something else to keep in mind. How much money are you willing to spend just to achieve your goal, right? There is because there's a fine balance between cost of doing it yourself and paying someone else to do it,
Yeah,
right?
it might be even quicker or better yet. That's what we do too. Like we we team up with our contractor.
Yeah,
We're like so we have the weekday crew and then the weekend crew. So we're the weekend crew.
yeah, for sure.
The weekday crew, our contractors doing a lot of the work because otherwise, if we're just doing work on the weekends, we'll never finish. It'll be like in 4 years,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And on top of that, that doesn't include like, being sick or, having other obligations.
Yeah, life happens as well, right? It's not every weekend you'll be able to be dedicated just to go up there and just work on the house, right? So, um, yeah, because like I said, we have the contractor, but you also you also don't want to be stepping on his toes either,
Absolutely.
right? So it's like, hey. if he's working on the bathroom, you don't want to be like, okay, hey, I'm painting. I'm gonna be painting the bathroom too. You know, too many chefs in the kitchen. So
That was an awkward interaction, really, because
exactly right.
because you're paying him, and he obviously like doesn't want to be like arguing with you and stuff because you're paying him, right? And then
Yeah.
he obviously wants to work too, and you want him to work too. So it's all everyone wants the same thing at the end, and it's almost like you're causing some of the delays unintentionally by
Yeah.
trying to work faster or doing more. You end up causing like a clog somewhere else, right?
Exactly.
And that conversation is it's good. Like you got to have that dialogue. So let's kind of talk about like the major work that's been done collaboratively with our contractor that we've actually had to spend the weekends to do. So the first one was like us just trying to be painters and save some money on the cabinets, the doors, that kind of stuff. The second major one was when I went up with my family and we did the flooring, the painting, and we did the
Spotlight.
pot lights, those things, right? So there was, and to be fair with you, I don't think any contractor in their career would do it the way that we did it. What I mean by that is literally like not eat, literally like work like till midnight, like basically just because of the time constraint. And of course, everyone's in the groove too, right? Like
Yeah.
the work, it's like that kind of work. The flooring and stuff. Like that's another thing that sounds easy, anyone could do, but there's mistakes that could be made. There's a lot of like uh what's it called, damage and wasted
Oh,
flooring.
for
It's not just like, oh, I just it's a Lego, you just put it all together. So what I'm saying by that is don't underestimate that amount, that kind of work. And painting too, like painting the walls is easy, yes, it's easy, but to make it look a certain way you need experience. So the contractors are my family that came in. They do contracting work. That's their
yeah.
full-time job. So they know how to do that very quickly and very so to them that's like easy work because they do it every day. For us it wouldn't be easy work. And for people that are brand new, I don't want you to get this idea like easy. Easy is because people have experience and not only because of the nature of the work itself.
Yeah.
Putting vinyl flooring is easier than probably like by hand doing hardwood flooring and all that stuff. I could reasonably assume because it's already kind of pre-templated for you, but there's still mistakes that are made,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
We,
Absolutely. I think that like even like again, so I wasn't there for the flooring, but like the general rule of thumb is like, you like if your house is 1,000 square foot, order 1,100 square feet.
yeah,
You have to have like, I think it's around 10%, just like, just in case for mistakes, especially if you're going to be doing it yourself. Um, Things happen.
yeah.
Obviously, maybe you cut things the wrong way or whatever happens, but it's good to have that little bit of buffer room because, if it was me and I think we'd probably use all 1,100 square foot to get that
I'll
done,
use
right?
1,400
Yeah.
square feet. But here's the thing though, it's not just laying the flooring down, connecting to get to them together. There's a way you're supposed to do it pattern wise,
Yeah.
so it looks like real wood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
that, right? Because I didn't know. I'll tell you why I didn't know. Because I'm quite ignorant. I'll be honest with you. I was just like everyone else, like that doesn't know. They're just like, oh, it looks easy. It sounds easy. Everyone says it's easy. But when I'm watching my dad and my uncles and my family them doing it, they're look it looks like they're like a very organized manufactured like way. One guy cuts it with the thing, passes it down to the other guy, measures it a certain way. So you're not so all the vinyl in the box that comes together, they're all the same size,
Yeah.
but you don't lay them out like that. You have to cut them up so it's like a certain pattern.
Yeah.
And that takes time. And if you don't know and you're like me, I would have just kind of laid it together. But I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. The reason why I realized that there's a little bit more detailed work is not just by watching them, but by the finished product. You know that there was a lot of like sort of extra details, extra knowledge that you needed behind this to get this done. So that's another thing I really want to emphasize. Don't underestimate the how difficult the work is, obviously, but don't like just don't like look past it. You want to be like realistic. Okay, this should take, just like painting too. Like there were certain parts on the wall where you knew it was like where I painted because it didn't look proper. Then you look at the parts where my dad painted and it looked really proper. So it's just one of those things. It's like, yes, anybody can do anything, but honestly, don't underestimate, and with experience, things will just look way better.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, right? Um, I 100% agree. And this is also part of the reason why I also wanted to get my hands dirty in this project as well, because you don't get experience by just watching. Like, I mean, you do, it's a little bit, but actually doing it, actually doing by hand,
Yeah,
is a really good, it's a really good learning experience, right? Especially if you have someone like your family there who are contractors, who are professionals who do this. That's like that's how they make a living. It's super beneficial, right? Because then now you get that experience, you get to see what they're doing, how they're doing it,
yeah,
right? Because I remember you were telling me, and you were saying it was like the Avengers in action, right?
yeah. It was like that.
It was something it was something to witness for sure. It was really incredible.
There was very little dialogue between each other, like each of them, instruction wise. They just kind of knew. They kind of knew like if this person's doing this, I have to do this next. So there's less like bumping into each other. There's less sort of like disagreements of sorts. So I don't want. This is another thing I don't want people to like misunderstand. Just because I had family help me with those things doesn't mean that I've used them before. Meaning that you don't have to be to be a great real estate investor. You don't need to know how to do any of this work. It just so happens that we decided to do this work because we just want to learn and we want to know
Yeah,
why. Because in the future, when we're doing like bigger projects, when our contractors are talking to us, we like really understand what they're talking about.
exactly.
Instead of just saying, "Hey, you just do it however," and then they're like, okay, are you sure? And then they just do it however, and then you're not happy with it at that point,
Yeah,
right? That's also
100%.
another thing, right? And we let's fast forward. So that was sometime at the end of January, beginning of February. We fast forward to last weekend that just passed, right?
Yeah.
We had a very important somebody important in our investor network that came and did the plumbing with okay, we didn't do it with him. He did it, and we were
Yeah.
helping him clean up
Yeah.
clean up things.
Yeah, for sure. It was yeah, so yeah, fast forward like Kevin was saying, we ended up so we got the permits, contract started framing, we had our plumber come in and he was starting to do like the plumbing roughing. And
And sorry, and I don't mean that we cleaned up his work. We cleaned up the places where there was like, trash and things that needed sweeping. So we did very little of
when
the
it comes
plumbing.
to actual plumbing,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, for sure. So yeah, he came down, and
Spent the weekend with
yeah,
us,
yeah, he spent the
obviously.
weekend. It was a long weekend, so his goal was to get it all done in that time frame. And yeah, he was a one man army, just 12-hour days. He was
Ate no food almost.
yeah,
No
yeah,
sleep and like very little food.
yeah. It was yeah, that it was pretty crazy.
It was inhumane almost, like,
Yeah.
and to be honest with you, I was very impressed with the energy level, like very high energy, very motivated. It's so important that like we were there to help support him where we needed, like we helped him out he needed, like picking up like gravel to, because we had to do some digging and stuff like that under the ground to,
Yeah, once you break the concrete,
yeah.
yeah.
But we supported him with that stuff. But when it came with the technical plumbing, like obviously I'm not a plumber, you're not a plumber, we
Yeah.
don't know about that stuff. And we spent that weekend really, I appreciated the work and the technical side of certain, well, not certain trades, all trades really, but the one that we were exposed to that weekend was the plumbing. I just had a greater appreciation and understand why people have to go to school and like learn about that and actually spend years and years through the apprenticeship, the program and stuff, because it's not something you learn on paper. You have to have, experience as well as repetition doing those sort of things.
Yeah.
And he made it look so easy because of that experience.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a sign of a good contractor or a good
Yeah,
tradesperson. They like someone who's very skilled in their field, they make it look easy. They make, oh man, when you see someone really do it, like, they're like, wow, like it's crazy. Like, wow, it's either you have a certain respect for it, like, oh wow, that's so crazy. Like, it sometimes makes people think that they could do it, right?
Yeah,
But it's it's there. There's a certain amount of time, again, repetition, all these kind of things that have gone into um their trade and their skill to make it look that way, right?
yeah,
So I think that, yeah, it was pretty crazy, for what he was able to accomplish in that time frame. Again, like you said, very high energy. You know, um, Not eating was kind of his choice,
yeah.
right?
It was a chore. No one for you know what? It's funny you say that because it sounds bad. Like we put like I even my own family, no sleep and no food. Hey, we don't put people through like, like slave labor. It's just I really believe that it's just these guys, they work and they're in a groove and they just don't look at the clock.
Yeah,
Like they don't look at the clock. They just do things. They want that finished outcome. And it just so happens coincidentally, like obviously they're in our network and there are people that have invested interest in us as their family member or friend or whatever it may be, right? So
yeah.
they care about us and they're under that clock too because they need to go home as well.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. And again, I think that, like you said, there's like, once they hit that groove, like things start to flow really, really well. And for them, sometimes it means just like, hey, I've been working the X amount of hours. I'm just gonna keep going
Yeah.
until this kind of groove where this thing kind of stops, and then maybe I'll stop and take a break and whatever. But if it doesn't stop, then in that case they don't stop. We you know we kept telling him, like, hey, do you want anything to eat? Do you want water? Do you want anything? And he's like,
Do you need help? No,
yeah, do you
no,
need do you
no.
need help? No, nothing. He's like, yeah, you can help me by cleaning up,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. It was like when he dug up when they dug up all the dirt and stuff from the ground, it was a deceiving amount of dirt,
Oh, it was a lot.
right? Like, you would think that, like, okay, hey, you broke X amount of space for piping, and then, you know you go in and you're like, I think we did, I want to say at least 20 trips each, back and forth with like the two pails to get rid of all the dirt,
Yeah.
to like, and you're like, yeah, it was, yeah, for me, I thought that was pretty deceiving, about, like, you would think that it's not a lot of dirt, it's just not a big deal, but yeah, it was crazy, the amount of dirt, and just like the finished product, with like, crazy what can be accomplished in a weekend.
Yeah, yeah. I really what I've realized is that obviously like we have a lot more to work to do, to complete the project.
Oh, for sure.
But our upstairs is pretty much 95% complete. We just need to do small things to
Yeah, it's just small touches now, right? It's just you know, um yeah, it's just small touches, and then, we have to get like a nice thorough deep clean after that.
yeah,
And I think that upstairs is basically a finished product,
finished product.
and then we can start to get on the market and get that going.
So where we have left is right now really is figuring out our HVAC situation, which we'll talk about another time for sure, because kind of running out on time. But HVAC will be diving into a little bit more in detail on what that looks like because we don't really even know what that looks like yet. We're still deciding. Electrical work, yes, there needs to be electrical work done after framing inspection, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
After framing and plumbing, that stuff, and then at that point, like we're gonna go through each step of the inspection process, and we'll definitely let everybody know what that looks like because even to us is new. I've never had an
Yeah,
inspector come
exactly.
and
Yeah.
inspect anything of mine before either. Uh, but yeah, so I just, this was really important, I think, to share it with people just so everybody knows like it sounds easy, but it's not really as easy as it sounds when it comes to, I guess, like underestimating the work. The work is always doable. It's just when you have a time constraint, it's a little bit that little bit of stress on top of that too. It
Yeah.
makes it a little bit not as easy as it is.
Yeah, because, if the plan is to spend, a whole weekend, especially if the house isn't in a inhabitable state,
Yeah.
um, that means you're probably gonna have to spend money on either an Airbnb or a hotel, and those things start to add up as well, right?
Yeah.
So those are things that people might not think about, when investing from far and wanting to do your own work, right?
Because well, not anyone's fault, but people sort of underestimate things when they don't know
Yeah,
until you go to experience. Then you're like, oh, I can't sleep on the floor all weekend because it's going to kill my back,
yeah,
which basically happened because my back was like, because I was so sleepy, I could sleep through it. But when I woke up in the morning, obviously I was
yeah,
telling you, my
yeah,
shoulder, my hip hurts, my back hurts.
yeah.
It's one of those things. So, uh, definitely more things to share. And obviously, I appreciate you, Ty, coming on because
Appreciate
th-
you
this
having me.
this project is not just me; it's Ty as well.
Yeah,
So everything Ty shares, with me and with everyone is value. It's part of our experience, and through that experience, my hope is so everyone here like listens and like, okay, well, I'm about to start, or I'm thinking about starting later. Okay, these are things I could sort of like archive and put in my back pocket. So
yeah,
and it,
absolutely.
and it's not to sound negative. Like I still want to do more of these sort of projects, and I still am looking forward. After after a couple more weeks, of course, uh, I'm still looking forward to going back. It's not like there's anything not to look forward to. It's just
No, no, I think that when you start to see progress and things are starting to move in general, like in the right direction, um, you it builds more hope,
yeah,
so you're like, oh man, yeah, this thing's getting close to finish, so you get more excited, you get more motivated to kind of keep the ball rolling,
yeah.
right? So yeah, even to go back upstairs, right? When like going from where we were before to like where it is now, right? Like,
Like a breath of fresh air. Yeah.
yeah, it's night and day different, right? Uh like like when you saw the place before, and then after you did the paint and the pot lights and all that kind of stuff and the flooring,
It's like a new place.
you're like, whoa, even our contractor came and was like, what the hell, what is this place, what happened over the weekend, this is,
Yeah.
the place looks completely different.
He came on Friday, and then I guess over like the weekend, I guess maybe like he dropped in a few times, and he could see, like the difference was so much in such a short time.
Yeah,
But it is what it is, and I'm glad that you came back on. I thought that you'd be back on a couple months later, but I mean, this was so near and dear to us because we're
yeah,
going
yeah,
through it. We're going through this process like live right now. So I thought like I'd rather pull you back on and talk about it fresh than have you later down the line when it's for a memory that we kind of distinct like kind of forget about. We
yeah,
miss details because I really don't want to miss details. I really want to share the real estate.
yeah, absolutely,
Thanks, Ty, and we'll have you on again sooner rather than later.
absolutely, looking forward to it.
All
Thanks
right,
for having
brother.
me.
Thank you.
All right, take care.